Welcome to the Practice Podcast, conversations probing the nature of practice. I'm your host, Dave Fearon. I was so excited about having this recorded conversation with David Oyanadel that we launched right into it, only for me to look up and notice that I had paused the recording. So I had to ask him to start over. So when you hear the beginning of this conversation, you're going to hear that kind of thing happening. The eagerness that I had for speaking with him, you'll understand when you hear what an unusual business that he and Ben Williams have created called ARsome Technologies, augmented reality specialty, and also how he has endured and kept going and has found answers to so many complicated technical, business, and social problems to keep that business growing and going, that it's a lesson in entrepreneurship. It's a lesson in effective practice, and it's a lesson in what a fellow human being means to a person like me, who was always bringing to him something I needed to try, and he always was able to say, yes, this can be done. We're going to figure out a way to make it happen. So we got this conversation recorded. I kept it right all the way to the end without any more silly mistakes, and I think you're going to really enjoy meeting David Oyanadel. I have to confess to the listeners that I started out this conversation with David Oyanadel, my good friend and someone whose work I've admired for a long while, and we got really into it. And it was rocking along. And then I looked up and I saw that I had opened up the recording. Now, this kind of ties back to when he got to know me. I was at Central Connecticut State University as an ambitious professor, ambitious to try to make the technology for instruction work on my terms. And David was there in the Instructional Technology Center managing that. And I would come in with such things. Now, I also would come in with, David, I'd call, David, I've tried this thing. I've clicked and clicked, just like this recording. David would very calmly, confidently say, Dave, have you, it's like the old cliche, have you plugged in the computer kind of answer? And I go, oh, of course, because, I had my limits. But David always was able to soothe me through it, and we got some pretty remarkable things done in collaboration during those last few years that I was there at Central. What I had said before we recorded was what I think characterizes David Oyanadel as a chief technology officer for a business that he and Ben Williams have created from scratch called ARsome Technologies and ARsome Health. And that word is yes, yes.
Thank you, David.
Yes, again, because all that time back when I was fumbling around trying to get something done differently for my students, there are a lot of people in a campus bureaucracy who just automatically say, no, it's not, allowed. It's not this. It's never been done. And I really needed someone who could say yes. And David did. And then, of course, he left around the same time I did and proceeded to say yes to earning an MBA so he could learn more about business and change his background from an educational background to business, and then actually go ahead and try to make a business happen. Yes. And that's a big, big, big yes. So, David, once again, what do you think about me calling you a yes man?
Oh, David, thank you. You're coming up with these concepts and words for people. It's amazing. Thank you for noticing that. As you said it, I kind of thought back, and I think you're correct. I don't remember ever having told someone that their idea of what they wanted to do was a non-starter. I always would try it with a yes. Earlier, you said something that I would say yes, and maybe the technology can support it this way, but let's try to massage it in a way that might give you your end goal.
Right.
So, and I'm going to say something about you, David, before we continue, is that it was always a pleasure working with you and supporting you in my support role, because you always brought in kind of ideas on how to teach things with your students and make your students part of the teaching moment. It was a kind of a relationship with the students that it was enriching to the whole class. Not every class was different in terms of the experience, in terms of always good quality experience. Online, hybrid, on ground, you always have discussion groups that were probably the most filled. I don't remember seeing other discussion groups that were as filled as your discussion groups, and with very good content from the students.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And one thing I forgot to say earlier is I love that you used to use also themes, time travelers theme, which is kind of sticks in my brain even to today, being a time traveler. And also you spoke about becoming way before the Becoming book came out. But
I know she stole my thunder, but that's okay.
That's okay. But you were telling us through your classes and through what you were doing with the students about being time travelers, about becoming, about. I also had the opportunity to interact with you on different committees, and one of them was about how can we tell students, freshmen, that they have a brand that they have to maintain and
grow.
Improved and maintain and shape. So wonderful to work for you, to support you, and actually you made it very easy to say yes, because you did a lot of work too.
Oh, we did, but there was another word that went along with that. You were becoming a time traveler. The word was intrepid.
Oh yes,
you're going to be an intrepid time traveler. So that brings me back to you and Ben and the amazing journey you've been on. Now, you and I have stayed in touch. I've bugged you from time to time saying, Dave, what's new, what's changing? And because I have had such admiration for your persistence. So if you could maybe just give people a thumbnail of what it was to create this business, 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago now? What was it like to get that off the ground? Because that was the first yes.
Yes.
We're going to collaborate. We're going to make it happen.
And that intrepid actually concept is, because it actually is scary coming from an organization where I have been in higher education for over 17 years, which is a little different, has other challenges, but you have basically a secure revenue structure at the end of the month or at the end of the 2 weeks.
Yeah,
there is something you can count on. Moving into entrepreneurship, where you don't know when your next contract is going to come in, the only thing that we can do is based on doing the best we can, so we can have good recommendations from previous customers to next customers, and trying to be strategic about the decisions. We have limited resources, but how those resources can be utilized, I guess there is a parallel there in higher education. The resources were always limited there too, but in a different way. But we had to be clever in the way, very strategic in the way we deploy these resources.
Mm-hmm.
And I could tell you that Ben is an intrepid traveler together with me on this, and I don't think I could possibly do without him working together the way we have.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful collaboration. He was just, I don't know if he was directly your student, but you were mentoring him at Eastern Connecticut State, and he had a lot of very large ideas and a lot of spirit to go with it.
Yeah, it was an interesting situation. He came, he writes an email during the summertime that he needs to take my class, which was a Saturday class that started at 8 a.m. on a Saturday. So how many students do push for being in a class like that?
That was a sign right there.
Yes. And then he went on to finish the class. And in fact, in my classes, I always ask if anybody had something, if they thought my syllabus was not challenging enough, or they would like an extra project or anything. And the only person that ever took me out on that proposal was Ben. So we worked on an additional paper that he was interested in writing, and
Yeah.
and that's how I got to know him. And then we moved on. He graduated. And then we reconnected again a few years later after he had graduated. And then he thought that maybe we had some work that we could do and accomplish together. And I
Yeah.
thought the same.
Yeah.
So,
There was another yes right there. And he could have,
yes,
and basically Ben, he could have said no to that because he had the trajectory, as I recall, to go to work in a secure. He could have gone to
yes.
work in one of our massive insurance companies, all kinds of opportunities that existed back then. And yet he had a vision that he wanted to be his own boss, which a lot of our young people do.
And guess
Uh,
what? He went on to graduate from UConn, MBA, then NYU in a master in technology management, and now he just finished his Harvard degree.
oh, wonderful. That's great to hear. Yeah.
In this short period of time. What a
So that's an amazing. I'll have to get him on one of these podcasts next.
yes,
But I think though that the point here, in regard to ARsome Technologies, is that he brought something well above and beyond you would normally find when two guys get together and say, "Hey, why don't we start a business?" But you did too, and you do too,
yeah,
because it's called technology.
right,
And I recall in a number of our conversations, David, where you had to basically learn so many different applications, what did you call them, tools,
correct,
Microsoft tools and Google tools, just to produce, and listen, talk about what you do produce, the augmented reality feature, which someone would look at and go, wow. But all kinds of things had to happen behind that. Talk a little bit about your intrepid journey into having to learn technologies that, you weren't born to know. You had to learn it the hard
correct.
way.
We gravitated towards augmented reality because I guess it's part of my education. And education to me is storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And part of how we can tell a story, whether it's for marketing purposes, for education, directly educational purposes, for entertainment purposes, there's always a story to tell. And adding something to reality, to our physical reality, adding something on top of that reality to allow us to bring information, so turn data into information by having maybe a 3D character, a 3D element, maybe even text overlays on top of something of our true reality to help us not to take our, basically our face from the telephones and be able to see augmented reality by looking through the phone camera and adding something to that reality that actually tells us something that we didn't know or we need to know about. So we fell in love with that. So how to do that, how to accomplish what one of our clients wanted to do, we had to learn. And because this is a moving target, as you know, technology moves so quick, so fast. What was today here a year ago is now old for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
So, and in fact, in the last 5 years, the augmented reality technology, aided by better chips, faster networks, 5G, aided by better cameras on mobile devices, has improved, I think, 100-fold from when
Wow.
we started
In 5 years.
in 5 years.
Time traveling now has picked up its pace.
Yes,
And the key word you just learned there was the word uh, you just used was the word learn. You use the word learn, and to me, to punch at this poor analogy that I keep hitting on, learning is a yes. Learning is an answer to a question. Can I do this? Can we move forward? Must I change? What do I need to know in order to do it? So it's that constant yes or no, yes being learning and no being status quo. So if you got satisfied that you would figure out enough augmented reality to make something in a museum look more interesting and so forth, and then try to standardize that and keep selling it over and over again, 5 years, you would be out of the picture, right? So you have to keep saying yes to the answer, what do we need to learn next, and can we do it? And the answer, of course, is yes. So
And I
tell us,
guess
go ahead.
that yes, with the yes is in order to learn, you have to have a little bit of humility,
Mm-hmm.
but also motivation. Why do you want to learn what you're trying to learn? And sometimes we were designing courses for students, always finding what is that motivating factor so that they'll be engaged. And in my real life now as an entrepreneur is I need to learn these things so we can actually meet the demands of the customer out there and bring value. It's almost like that saying that says, if you pay someone, the carpenter, to hammer some wood, and the carpenter comes in and charges you a little bit of money and says, how come you're charging so much when you're just hammering some nails? It says, yes, for the nails and the hammer, like, $10, but to know where to hammer and when to hammer, $100.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a really cool one. It puts it all into perspective. So you've had to continually learn something to make that moment occur where people go, wow. I remember a time when you were looking into trying to make restaurant menus
Yes.
work up on a phone so that people could actually have a better visualization, actually see the food prepared. And we met with a restaurateur who thought it was an encouraging idea. And then we went over to a diner to have breakfast. And you showed me the Halloween creatures. And the waitress came over to take our order. And I said, take a look. And she looked into it. She could see the diner. She could see the people, but she also saw a goblin or a skeleton or something coming
Yes.
at her. And she, good old Neapolitan waitress, she goes, eek. So
Yes.
that was one of your earlier efforts, but it had an impact. She probably told a lot of people about that. Talk
And
about some. Go ahead, David.
okay. Well, in that part of talking and meeting people, meeting customers, whether it's a customer or someone we're talking to about an idea, that's part of the fulfilling part of doing this job as entrepreneur. Although I did work with many people at the university system, but now I'm finding that I'm meeting even more variety of people with all kinds of walks of life, all kinds of needs that are different, and I have to be on my 2 feet to be able to understand what they're trying to tell me. And I'm trying to have that humility to say, I need to learn more about this, more about not just the technology, but more about how to understand what they want.
Yeah. Yeah. So while I'm blanketing you with the word yes, strategically, you can't always say yes because you're hearing people saying, I want this, this, and the other thing. And sometimes you have to gently tell them, no, it's not within our capacity yet. Please come back. Maybe even direct them to some place that's more, has built up more of a capacity. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But you can't say yes to everything, right? So you've said yes to some things. Could you give us a sample of something you worked on fairly recently that you think is that shows merit for all the effort you went into doing the technology behind it?
I think one project that we're still in the middle of, it's the ARsome Health project, to say yes to that project. You know that I'm more humble than not, but I'm just trying to, how could it be that a company like ours makes business with Australia, a company in Australia, and we travel to Australia to present at a convention. We're still talking with them. We're still engaged with them. Then we meet a company in Boston, Massachusetts, and New York. It's taken us in a number of different ways that I could not have imagined.
Couldn't have believed it, could you? Living there in little Willamette, Connecticut, basically commuting back and forth across the river was, and not that you were born and raised in Chile, so you're out of the world, but still, there's a lot of years where you weren't off and on here and there. I remember you also did something with a car museum. Was it in California? I think you set up a
Yes, also
place.
California.
Yeah,
And
that
now,
was extraordinary.
yeah, you mentioned Chile. And Chile is interesting. I was born in Chile, so that's why you hear an accent if you're listening.
Oh, I didn't notice the accent. I envy
So,
it. It's so beautiful.
no, no problem. Spanish is the first language, of course. And we did travel to Chile to be at a virtual reality and AR conference.
Mhm.
We met companies. We actually held a meeting in the tallest building in Latin America with a company that's interested. And yesterday, this is even, we're getting a phone call from Chile to talk, to work something out. Out of all places, they would like to do memories for people when you
Hmm.
when you when you when you passed away. They would like to have this augmented reality memories that can pop up as you visit your loved one.
You know, there's something
Very
about that.
strange, but
I mean, with over 150,000 deaths in this country, and I know tragically the same sorts of proportionate numbers are happening all over in Latin America as well. But when you said that, I had that feeling I often get when you mention these ideas that come to you and you consider them. And that idea alone,
no,
given how many people, and here it is the day of John Lewis's, I think, his
yes,
final funeral event, a lot of people really want to remember, and they don't. An obituary only goes so far, and stories around at the wake go so far. But to be able to go to a spot or be able to aim at an X somewhere that you show them, and it would bring some of the most vivid aspects of a person's life to mind, to eye.
yes,
Wow. So I hope it happens because I know there's plenty of demand up this way too. And again, you could say yes and make it and figure it out. There's a lot of dynamics that you'd have to work out. But back to your point of being an educator, is it entertainment? No, there's something to being able to help a family and friends capture and retain a vivid memory of someone's history, which is definitely another kind of education, maybe the
yes,
best kind.
yes. And for one item that I notice as a pattern into what we're doing is that how to align those objectives to activities, which is part of what we do in education all the time.
All the time.
How to interact with the client that wants something done in A, B, C, but we have to make sure that A, B, and C connect. I know earlier before we started recording, we talked about something. So there are a few things that are still in the docket that I'm not at liberty yet
No,
to speak about, but because the clients need to be, we have to wait for them
of course.
to,
You've
to
done a lot of waiting over the months that you've been doing this, and I really respect that. That's one of the real challenges of sustaining yourself personally in your practice is that I'm sure there's some of these things you would have loved to have jumped on, like A, B, C.
yes,
But the hesitation on the part of the customer is, do we have the resources? I have to run it up the flagpole. All the rest is real. And so
yes,
to be patient and humble, but also ready is quite a challenge.
yes, and talking about ready, our team comes from all walks of life, and that's a good thing. We have very young individuals, older individuals, and individuals my age. We have a spirit of the energy to make sure that solutions come to life, but at the same time in a fun way. I don't
Uh-huh.
want to make this, even the work and interaction with the client, to make it effective but fun. That's because that's how you get people to come with their ideas and to relax and to be able to express what they would like to do and see. Because augmented reality, which I'm still finding a way to explain it in that elevator pitch, uh, that for people, but I think it's going to become more real and more close to people when the augmented reality glasses actually become a reality,
Yeah.
which is Apple is teasing us with some little videos and patents that they have, and so it will be much easier for people just to put glasses on and be able to walk around and see. But for those of you concerned about protections, there's not going to be a video camera on the glasses. It's just sensors. So no,
Cool.
so
Cool. No,
nobody's going to be recording you.
there's part of the waiting is for something like the right sort of glasses to come through. But you didn't say, well, why don't we put everything on hold until Apple or someone else puts out the glasses? You're always saying, in the meantime, the iPad, the phone, we can work with it in the meantime.
Okay, because it's still a very portable element. Android phones are in almost every pocket. As I said earlier, I'm not sure if in this section I said it or before, but the network 5G also it's there. It's going to be in our midst pretty soon, making our downloads faster.
Mm-hmm. It's all coming.
Yeah. We're also working with a local company, actually Manchester, has a number of companies here, right here on Main Street. 4 technology companies.
Yeah, there's a vision there to try to bring back the original spirit that made manufacturing real in all over Connecticut, but particularly there in Manchester, and that whole idea that we can still make stuff. It may not be product, it may be service, or it may be experience. But I remember you walked me up and down last summer and showed me a few spots where the local officials had some vision, and then some people had some money. So it's great that it's happening in old cities like Manchester.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Let's talk in these last few minutes about, I'll throw an easy question to you. What have you, David Oyanadel, what have you learned about yourself in these last 6 or 7 years now that you've gone through these remarkable changes? What have you learned about David Oyanadel himself as a person?
A wonderful question. Wonderful question. Let me think. The first thing that comes to mind, I think I'm much more loyal than I thought I was. I thought I was a loyal person, but my loyalty is strong to customers, to my partners, to my business dealings, and ethics. I've learned that and I'm not trying to, I know this is being recorded, I'm not trying to speak about myself in this tone.
I just asked you to speak about yourself, and I'm very impressed with what you said so far.
Yeah, the ethical of what we do for people. I think I used to consider myself an ethical person.
Sure.
But even more so now, after when we're dealing with people's dreams, not that I was not dealing with faculty's dreams, but I see it very much connected even to someone's company's livelihood, because they want to engage with AR because they see it as a way that they can also entertain more value and convert it into some revenues. And our responsibility is to them to make sure that what we do actually fulfill that mission as well. So the ethics of actually, when we say, you were asking earlier about saying yes, and sometimes you have to say no. And if we had to say no, it's because of that reason. And yes, there is a strategy, it's a strategic decision too about can we do it, can we not do it, but also the ethical of can we do it for this group, so that ethically.
Right, because your name becomes their name in a sense that once it's a ARsome Technology or an ARsome Health production, it's now in the bloodstream of other companies, and not only around here but all over the world as your potential. And that notion of loyalty is a wonderful term because I don't hear it a lot anymore, and yet it's the essence of why you and Ben, you loyal to each other and now to your team, and further delivering on your promises to your clients, is so positive. It's, if you were not seeing that in yourself, I don't think we'd be having this conversation, because I think you've been a flash in the pan, there for a quick buck and out. And you're certainly not in for a quick buck, but I've got a
No.
feeling there's some prosperity ahead of you throughout, particularly as you are able to help people with solutions because of the changes of the COVID setback, that you can help them see through old ways of business are not working, new ways of business will. And I could see them enlisting your imaginations and your ability to make things happen in ways that really were probably weren't in the minds of some of the company leaders back when we were scratching our heads. And I was one of the head scratchers saying, well, who might want to buy into this? I mean, is it going to be insurance? Is it going to be manufacturing? Where is it going to be people who got the lights in their eyes who say, yeah, I want to have an enhanced customer experience, or I want to enhance my training with my employees. And now I think there are a lot of people who are scratching their heads and saying, how can we do things differently? And I see you, David, and Ben, and ARsome right there in the conversation saying, well, let's think about this. Just like you did for me to round out this conversation when I'd come storming in, rushed, scratching my head like everyone's, but saying, I've got this idea. I really want to make it work. I have no idea how to do it. And I would rush back out feeling like something was going to happen. And then a few days later, I could call you and say, hey, it worked.
That's right.
Wonderful time. And I look forward to many more times with you, David, as your friend and one of your company's greatest admirers.
Thank you, David. And again, as a friend, because I also consider myself your friend, and as a pleasure. But I've also met many other people that consider you their friends, and from students who said yes about David Fearon and the comments. And so I don't think I'm alone in this. So I thank you for also giving me the time to listen to me also when you were at Central, when we worked together, because you were a good listener. And I think I appreciate that.
I have to say about being a good listener, you told me before this started that you had listened to a lot of the podcast episodes. And I see you on LinkedIn now saying a like for when I post a little clip about what's coming up this week. So I got to thank you. You may be my most loyal listener.
Well, should I mention the payback I'm getting on this one? Oh,
no.
No.
There go the ethics. There go the ethics.
No, David, it's a pleasure to see your idea of this podcast being born. I think I was at an earlier stage when you were mentioning this idea, why you wanted to interact with Peter Vale.
That's right.
And this way he was unable to write the way he used to. So this was an excellent way to maybe use technology to capture his thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And from the podcast also, I'm getting to know him. I mean, although you did explain to me very well who he was and made it very clear, and I was very impressed already. But through the podcasts, I'm able to know him a little better, I think.
Well, that makes me doubly happy that you've been a listener, because that was and still is the primary motivation that I have, is to keep Peter's thoughts about the nature of practice and the whole question that he raised years and years ago that he couldn't quite answer and got me involved in it. That's why I'm doing it. And I still feel his spirit. I hear him chuckling in my ear now saying, okay, David, enough about you. Enough about me. This is about David Oyanadel. And it has been. And thank you again.
Thank you, David.
Thanks for listening to the Practice Podcasts, where we discuss practice with a capital P. If you'd like to hear more, listen in on Spotify, Podomatic, and Apple Podcasts, or go to inactionresearch.com/podcasts-page. And if you'd like to learn more about social inaction and the nature of practice, head over to enactionresearch.com for more information. Thank you for supporting this show. We look forward to hearing from you soon.